This is your Not So Critical update for Friday, August 20th. Today, T-Mobile and the 7 stages of ransomware greed. The Taliban has biometric tech, data included. And Morse code is making a comeback. And now your host, like Sutton and Peter Lowe.
That's going to kick us off once again. Here we go, ready to get started.
The only bad thing about that intro music is that we can never do a techno version of it, of the techno remix. We need to do like a classical remix, just like a instrumental version.
Yeah, you can't see me when it's running, but I'm like dancing every single time. And I actually was thinking like I shouldn't comment on the music every single time. Like it's just the start of our show. It's not that big a deal. Act like you've been here before, Mike. But I never do. I just get so excited about it.
It's great. It's amazing. I love it every single time. It's the only time of the week I get to hear it. So
when I do the editing, I listen to it like a dozen. I don't know. It gets me excited every time. Just keep listening to it. But yeah, I mean, fun. I like doing the show. We're actually recording a little bit earlier, so we're trying to settle on our Friday morning release date. Here now, we're recording Wednesday evening. So any big stories that break Thursday, we're going to miss out on. Yeah.
We're like a real live talk show where they do the record, and then there's like some massive current event going on, like a election or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're like, we assume that such and so is going to be winning. We're like,
yeah. But like with security, all these breaches, and we're going to actually have a good example of this today. The reporting the day of a breach or security incident is never like, you can't rely on it. I almost think like even the story we have today, the thing I wrote down is it too early to even talk about this? Because it's all going to change by next week, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, you're totally right. And I think the bit is that we're missing is that the discovery on Twitter, the Twitter thread. That's always like pre-news sites.
I know. There was another story that we were even thinking about that we didn't do because we've talked about it so many times and I don't even remember what it was. Like it's all these stories are the same.
Yeah.
It's a good thing we have so much good positive news today.
That's right. It's our job to keep it fresh and keep it positive.
All right. Well, with that, let's jump in and talk about how the individual CEO and chief security officer at Solarwinds are getting personally sued as a result of the Solarwinds hack. This is going back, what, a couple months ago now, Peter?
A few months. Yeah. Beginning of the year. This is great. I'll be honest, I didn't quite understand the intro to this because it said something along the lines of there's one thing that's sure, the three things that are certain in life is death, taxes, and CISOs getting sued, which I am not hugely familiar with this happening that often, and I kind of wish it would happen more. There's some interesting details which, as you read through the article, which are like, well, they really should get sued. The fact that the password was SolarWinds 123. The fact that there was no security practices in place. The fact that they lied to their investors. Told them that everything was fine. All this stuff is like, it's a pretty low bar that they didn't manage to cross. So,
and in the article they rebutted some of that and. I made a note about the SolarWinds 123 password just because that comes up so often. The admin password is admin or whatever. Like, can't believe that's even still happening. They said that it was on a testing or deployment server or something that really had nothing to do with the attack, but whatever. The technical details of it interest me much less than the social impact of executives at corporations being personally liable for the things their corporations are doing, which I am 100% on board for. SolarWinds completely aside, the idea of like corporate personhood and the corporate veil to protect individuals from liability, I think is absurd. And this is nothing about SolarWinds, just kind of, the legal system, at least here in the United States, makes me crazy.
I don't think it's just the US. I mean, I think a lot of companies operate that way. But yeah, it's cool, isn't it? Because once an executive becomes legally liable for the like a good best effort security, they're going to actually make sure it happens, and they're the people who can make sure it happens. So good, you know.
Yeah, and I
Maybe we'll
think
see
it
less
goes
of
to
this
the
stuff.
health of the market overall. If and like this is a political issue, not a technical issue for sure, but I think part of the disconnect between the stock market and the actual health of the economy has to do with these very short-term incentives and a lack of personal interest, where and again, nothing to do with SolarWinds. I don't even know how they manage themselves financially, but if all you're interested in as a publicly traded company is quarter over quarter growth at the, potentially at the risk of the long-term financial health of the company, then that's what you're going to do. If you have no personal responsibility for what the corporation does, then you can take any kind of crazy action. Just the whole idea of it makes me crazy, and that SolarWinds happens to be the target of it in this case is just a coincidence. But like they in the article, they say that this is not just another nameless, faceless piece of litigation. This one specifically names the company's chief information security officer. But what about the nameless, faceless victims of these kind of hacks? Like, why is this one so one-sided? I don't even like the reporting on this. It's just, the story annoys me. More than anything, I'm just annoyed by it.
All right. Well, I think it's a good step in the right direction. Let's take a breath. I mean, I you don't often get this annoid.
I know, and it's not even about the technology; it's about the politics. So now you know where to find me. I don't care about privacy problems, but don't get me started on corporate personhood.
I think we already have.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that ship has sailed. I know.
The nice thing about this is, I don't think that the counter argument is, well, how can they ensure that there's never going to be a breach in the whole organization? That's not the point, right? The point is that they make the best effort, and currently their motivations are to make the company money, not to check boxes to get compliance with different things. It's not on actual security and actually making a difference and really making sure that things are secure. And I think that if they try and do that, then they'll get to the stage where if some litigation like this comes up, they'll be fine, because they'll just say, well, I know I did this and did this and did this, and that's acceptable to me personally.
Yeah, I think that comes up a lot as the argument that, and this would politically, we used to hear this. It doesn't even actually come up much anymore. I don't remember the last time I heard somebody say it, but like the idea of tort reform in the U.S. that doctors should be exempt from liability because of the nature of their job. We have what's it called, where police have conditional immunity, something like that.
Oh, qualified immunity.
Qualified immunity, yeah. But in all these cases, like, we have protections against frivolous lawsuits.
Right.
If you did your job and still you could still get sued, that's fine. But then we have a court system that litigates that and decides like, yeah, this terrible thing happened, but you're not personally responsible because you did take the right actions. To say that you should be immune from that makes no sense to me. Because like you said, if you named somebody personally, CISO, CEO, in a lawsuit, and it was determined that like, no, they, yes, this thing happened at the company, but they had the right systems in place, they had the right process in place, they were providing good leadership, and they're not personally responsible, then great, the system worked. So I guess on one hand, I'm glad to see these kinds of suits. I have some affinity for SolarWinds, so I'm reluctant to get too much on them specifically, but it's a good example. Yeah. Just really annoyed by the angle of the story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's other ones about this as well, so maybe we should dig some of those up for next time.
Right. You want to talk about T-Mobile?
Yeah, this is funny. I mean, it's another breach, right? It's just another breach at the end of the day. But what I love about this is, okay, so T-Mobile have had a bunch of data, user data, being sold on the darknet by some hackers. That's it, really. The lovely thing about it, lovely. The thing about it is the stages that the reporting has gone through. So first of all, it was the Twitter thread, actually, that I saw. Then there was unconfirmed reports of T-Mobile data breach. And then T-Mobile put out a press release saying, no, we don't know, maybe, yeah. And then there was T-Mobile confirms it was hacked, but no personal data. That's not being confirmed at all. Now it is personal data. Here's some examples. It's got pins in it. It's got names and addresses and EMEIs. I think social security numbers as well. Why did T-Mobile have that stored? I don't know. But it's my prediction for what's going to be next is there's going to be a crappy apology, a non-apology. Then there's probably going to be a sort of an outrage, and then there's going to be a more heartfelt apology. Then they're going to hope that it goes away, and then the data is going to be released, and people are going to get upset again. So maybe end up in a class action, but we'll see.
Yeah, they said 40 million current, former, and prospective customers, and it included the names, date of birth, social security number, and driver's license ID information. And they had that because these were people who all applied for credit with the company. So 40 million current, former, and prospective customers who applied for credit. And then just for follow-up, I think in the other article you linked, they talk about how preemptively they changed everybody's PIN number, and they also said that they were going to give everybody 2 years of credit like identity theft monitoring or whatever it is that they, the standard to get
because that works.
But, yeah, I know.
Problem solved. Here we go.
You're right about the the stages of reporting. We went through the same thing even just recently with Kaseya. We could have talked about that 4 weeks in a row because new thing after new thing just kept coming out. And it seems like they never get better news the longer the story drags on. It always seems to get a little bit worse.
Yeah.
So anymore, I almost feel like the week a story breaks, we shouldn't even talk about it. And that was the note I made about this story is like, by the time next week comes, there's going to be a whole new raft of bad news, and we'll be more interested in that. So maybe we just wait.
I think occasionally there are some good ones, though. There's like these massive data breaches, or even small ones, where you actually get a really good, honest response from the company itself. And they say, hey, listen, this is what happened. This is who's affected. We're really sorry. This is what we're doing about it. And they put some sensible procedures in place. They fess up and they're just honest. And that is really the only way it could go. It's tied to this kind of like the motivations for the people involved. There's the marketing department and the press department who are just so terrified of anybody finding out anything negative. Until it works its way up, until someone says, hey, look, this is obviously everybody knows what's going on. Come on, let's fess up. So
that's the pattern we saw early with Kaseya, is that they did kind of get out in front of it and try to say, oh, we shut everybody's on-premise and servers down until we find it out. We're doing this investigation. We're going to be very, cautious and open about this. But then the longer it went on, the more it seemed like, well, maybe you're not being totally open, and maybe there were things you could have done to prevent it. So, I don't, is there an example of a company who did it really well? That feels like a positive security search that we'd be banging our heads against the wall trying to figure out.
I've seen a couple, but honestly, they are the exceptions.
Well, somebody can tell us in the comments who we need to look at as a example of a company that handled a security breach really, really well. And lots of companies survive it, but
the website haveibeenpwned.com.
Mm-hmm.
I think there probably would be some good details on there, so I might check that out later.
All right,
see if we can come up with some good examples.
Story to find.
Yeah.
Anything else on T-Mobile?
Let's see. The 7 stages of the 7
which
stages
kind of goes to how the
companies
stories develop, right?
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I'm just gonna it's pretty similar. Shock, denial, anger, bargaining, that's the point. We're like, no, we can. It's fine. It's not really, And then guilt, depression, which for a business is expresses itself in different ways. And then acceptance. Finally, I think acceptance is also can be brushing it under the carpet and hoping nobody remembers in a long enough time, or actually doing something about it. But
that's when you decide to pay the ransom and then not tell anyone about it.
Right. I saw a presentation about ransomware the other day that was talking about the number of attacks and how it's just so vastly underreported because of people who just pay it. And I guess I knew that. I just didn't really think about it before. And there must be so much cybercrime going on that we just don't know about. That's people are just embarrassed about.
Yeah, it's like you said before. Well, the volume of it you couldn't keep up on. Like you said before, you just do the best you can and try to keep up. Even if you tried to follow all of the stories, you couldn't. But I think you're totally right. A lot of the stories never even come out, especially with smaller companies, which are, I was going to say increasingly the target, but it seems pretty well evenly distributed. I don't know. I think we did an article last week that talked about how the big companies are our primary target right now. And
I think there's always going to be
money into protection.
Yeah, there's always going to be a distribution. I think there's never going to be a reason not to go after do a kind of spread the net far and wide. And then there's going to be the bigger targets that get more focused attacks, the spear phishing and stuff like that. So everybody's fair game.
They are. All right. Next story.
Next story.
So I'm just going to sleep through this one. I'm bored by the whole topic. Wake me up when you're done. Everybody knows they're being tracked. Yawn.
I know. This is not true. I mean, it's only a single study, which always makes me wonder. But this is, oh my God, shock horror. People don't know that they're being tracked when they go shopping. Like, it's not, so you said to me, well, they should know, right? And I just don't think that is a reasonable assumption. Like, why
These are the people who are like, oh, you mean my discount card actually is turning over information that can be used to target me better? Yes, that's why they do these things, obviously.
This is facial recognition from when you walk in a shop, and it's looking at what you're looking at stuff. Okay, you've got kids, right? So imagine a 15-year-old kid goes into a shop and starts buying something and then gets tracked, and then goes into another shop and they're linked together, and then they get targeted, some hyper targeted ads. Like, that's not cool, and there's no reason to expect the kid to know about this. And let's say, okay, there's laws against underage people being tracked, non-adults. They hit 18 and suddenly they're fair game. I still wouldn't expect them to know about this. My mother, my grandmother, I don't know, just normal people who aren't constantly bathing in this torrent of bad news about privacy and tracking, like we are.
That could be the episode title every week. But so they're presumably using it to prevent shoplifting. If somebody gets banned for the store, they use the facial recognition to see if they come back in. I'm sure they do the exact same thing at casinos. People could say, well, I didn't know that was happening there too. Like, it's fine if people don't know, but why, if you're a store, why wouldn't you do this?
No, I do not believe that is the same argument. Why if you're a store, why not track people's eye movements and see what they're looking at? Like, if you can, why not?
Yeah,
if you're allowed to.
I totally agree.
But why would you assume that people know that's happening?
Well, okay, so maybe what difference does it make if they know or not?
That's not the point. The point is that people don't. Well,
because you don't want the store to decide for you if it's okay or not. Like, right? It's just if I know that they're doing it, I could decide whether I want to go in or not.
Okay, on the face of it, you're right. Fine. But nobody likes people talking about them behind their back, right? It's much worse that you'd rather be confronted about an issue than someone who has a problem with you than them go gossiping to all your mates about you, right?
So is it different from if they've got like, what do they call it, one-way glass or two-way glass, like a mirror that you can look through from the other side? If they've got a security guy watching you through a mirror that you don't know is there, is that any different? He still sees you
Uh,
picking your nose and scratching your ass or whatever.
well, that's a good example because if I realized, I mean, the fact that okay, why is it only one-way glass? What are they trying to hide? Why aren't there signs saying, "Hey,
Well, because
we're
they
tracking
they
you"?
know that it. Well, okay, so I guess there's two ways to look at it. One is they know if you're being watched, you're not going to do the thing that they're trying to catch you doing, right? So maybe that's an argument. I mean, it's like
And
the
and the reason is because people don't realize they're being watched. So they do stuff that they
yeah.
wouldn't otherwise do, right? So I might go into a shop and look at some tentacle porn or something, whereas ordinarily I may wear my cap and dark glasses. I don't know.
You have a
I,
uniform specifically for that activity?
it's my tentacle porn outfit. Yeah, yeah. um, you know what I mean. I mean, maybe you're just a really super open, honest person with everybody, right? Whenever it doesn't matter if anybody's watching you or not. Nothing makes a difference to you.
No, I don't know if I'd say that. But I don't know. I don't know.
I see what you mean, though. I totally see what you mean. It
Like as
shouldn't
far as a
matter.
deterrent, that's why you see people who have like this property protected by so and so security, even if they don't have a security system. So these stores could say, hey, you are under constant surveillance using facial recognition and eye tracking, and maybe that warning would be enough to prevent people from doing it.
It
Maybe
would be
it
a
would
start.
make
It's not just
people
that.
try to be sneakier. I don't know.
I don't think it's just the shoplifting, though. I think it's the standard marketing data vampires that are taking all this information and doing something not I say nasty, like targeting people with it, basically marketing attribution and data and
Mm-hmm.
targeting and all that stuff.
I
That's
mean,
the side.
certainly if they're
The
not yet, they
you know,
will be eventually as the technology catches
yeah,
up to allow them to
yeah,
do
yeah, yeah.
that.
Yes, yeah, and
But
that's kind of not fair.
I guess, but the question I always ask is like,
How do people not know?
well, like yes, you should know. You are being tracked all the time. Pay attention.
I
But
pity your kids, man. You're gonna be like sitting there, guys. You're gonna be what you're watching. The government is
yeah,
watching you 100% of the time. Everybody's
sure.
looking at you, judging you, using this like.
And look, if there's anything I'm not interested in, it's watching my family's browser history. Uh, but the technology exists for it, so somebody is going to do that, and that's like, how else is it going to turn out? If the technology exists, somebody's going to do it. So why? How are we
Such a
surprised
pessimist.
when they do?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm a pessimist. Yeah, is this a bad day for you today, Mike? Because I.
No, I'm fine with it. This is fine. I'm in a great mood today. What is the problem? Why do people keep saying that to me?
Okay, right. So we've established that Mike is basically a nihilist, and nothing matters
That's
anymore.
probably fair to say. Sure.
Okay.
Ready to move
Sorry.
on?
Yeah. What else we got up? Actually, before we move on, I have to say something to anybody who's watching. This week, I said last week that I'd look for more positive stories, and I have totally failed this week. But all the fun ones are coming from Mike. Seriously, this is. I was unexpected, and it was
I'm
only
the
when I went to
optimist.
look at the list of links. oh, oh,
That's
okay.
that's why
Yeah,
I'm here.
yeah, and the resident comedian apparently. So,
Oh yeah. So I mean, these are just kind of two quick ones. What do I have here? Yeah, they put new banner ads up. I guess I gotta like click through some of this stuff.
yeah,
So this is a story we actually talked about a couple weeks ago. That this hacker group stole $600 million in cryptocurrency, but then kind of like returned it over time, and now I think almost all of it has actually been returned. What I thought was interesting is the company that was the target of this, Poly Network, was has reached out to them to ask them to be their
Yeah.
chief security advisor, which I think is great. And it reminded me of like you hear stories about the CIA recruiting hackers from Black Hat or wherever because they're the people who know what's going on, and they bring them in to help bolster national security. Um, which I'd rather have them on. I don't. There's no winners. Whatever. I was gonna say I'd rather have them on the side of a giant corporation than on the side of the government, but that's Sophie's choice, I think. So let's not even get into that. Um, Credit to Poly Network to keep this positive for taking a step to address what happened. And maybe this is a case where they were pretty open about the incident and are taking action to find the resources to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I'm on board.
Me too, absolutely. I just want to say one little thing. A favorite quote of mine from Mikko Hipponen, who's the CTO. I think he's the CTO or chief security researcher. I'm not sure, but he's one of the founders of F-Secure, and in Finland. And he wrote a tweet years and years and years ago, and he said, "Remember that every cryptocurrency has a built-in bug bounty. So if you can find it, you're gonna make a lot of money."
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. This is not unprecedented. Like this has happened before. Kevin Mitnick is the famous one. He wrote this. He was a famous hacker from years ago and ended up working for the FBI and all sorts of people. And I've seen other
original
examples
freaker,
where
right?
Yeah, right. Is he actually? I don't want to put my name to that, but he's one of the originals. Yeah. So it's very cool, and this actually is a kind of an example of a good way of dealing with a security issue that we were just talking about. So maybe we had one lined up all the time.
I think so. And so related to this, I have this kind of back to back. Friendly hackers saved Ford from a potential leak of customer data. And here I would say credit goes to the hackers more than to Ford, because Ford's response was kind of lukewarm. They took the endpoints offline within 24 hours, but at the same time, never really fully acknowledged the problem. And in requests for comment, they say, the findings you submitted are considered private. These vulnerability reports are intended to prevent compromises which may require disclosure. So just kind of implying that, like, this doesn't require disclosure, but thanks for your report. And maybe we did something and maybe we didn't. So a little shadier on the Ford side, but credit to the hackers for bringing it in the open.
White hat hackers. This is I mean, it's a thing. Are you aware of the whole debate about responsible disclosure and what the rules are, and how someone, if they find a vulnerability, how they should tell people about it and when they should go public?
Yeah,
because a lot of the time it's sorry.
Just that they talk about it a little bit in the article with HackerOne as kind of a clearinghouse for these reports, giving companies an opportunity to fix them before, especially in the case of zero-day exploits, you're releasing the code or the details on the vulnerability out into the public, so that hopefully the companies can do something about that in advance. And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't.
Have you ever tried to report a security vulnerability yourself?
I have not. No, not a security vulnerability. I'd found some things with like SQL Server way back, but they weren't security vulnerabilities. They were just performance issues.
Bugs or
okay. Bugs.
Well, were you able to get in touch with anyone? Did you manage to find out who to speak to?
Yeah, this is like probably close to 20 years ago now, but I do remember being on the phone with several engineers there about the issue, and I went back and forth with them submitting steps to reproduce the issue, and I did a significant amount of troubleshooting on it. But this is, I mean, I don't remember a lot of the details, but I just remember that in my head I have always been very impressed by myself for finding this bug in SQL Server as a young programmer 20 years ago, and I think it did get fixed.
Oh, well done! Yeah, congratulations. My point was sort of, I was aiming towards the how hard it is to go through the whole process. of reporting something, especially security vulnerabilities. I found one with my bank's online banking system once, and it took me literally months to get in touch with someone. I tried emailing them. I tried like security at the bank. I tried looking for anything on the website, how to report things to them. I used the contact form. I used contacted customer services. I phoned them several times. And it took me such a long time to get through to anybody who actually cared about the thing that I was telling them about. And eventually, like ages later, they credited me £25 in my bank account and said, "Thank you for reporting this vulnerability. We have addressed the issue," and blah, blah, blah.
Little bug bounty there.
Yeah, but wow, how difficult was it? Like, and for someone outside an organization, finding the right people is so difficult sometimes. There's stuff like HackerOne, which is great, but typically it's a lot more difficult. I'm surprised that Ford.
Sorry.
I was surprised that Ford actually responded at all, to be honest.
Yeah, kind of. But so it probably depends on the size of the company and the industry of the company. So if you're big enough, you're probably keeping an eye on these clearinghouses to see if you're named specifically, because you have a lot of risk there. And if you're a more technical company, you're probably also paying slightly closer attention to these kinds of things. So in the case of like a local bank, a regional bank, maybe they're just not big enough to have the resources.
This was Santander. This was Santander.
We have Santander here too. I guess they're a pretty big bank.
Yeah, they are pretty big. Yeah,
but I be interested in think security flaws.
It's just, the thing is, there's so many layers, and they just don't expect that stuff to come from the outside. But it's really tricky. If you search for like security reporting Santander, you won't find anything. Well, at least I did when I tried. Sometimes with big organizations, it's actually the opposite of them being interested. They're not interested. I think it's because otherwise they might get just tons of random people saying, "Hey, I've had a problem," and it's not. And they just have to set up, spend resources filtering through all the rubbish that they get.
Yeah, I wonder if that comes into play even in a story like this, where there's risk to acknowledging the problem, because then you're saying, "Oh yeah, we have this huge security issue that we didn't even know about."
Yeah, liability. So if they do that, then is the CISO going to get sued? Yeah.
Not if you keep your mouth shut.
That's always the best approach, right? Just don't say anything. Denial. So, what stage is that? That is that's step 2. It's called stage 2.
Is there a reluctant, half-hearted acknowledgement step?
I think that might fall under bargaining.
That's where you're saying. There you go.
Yeah, stage 4.
Sounds like a foolproof plan. So I'm already depressed looking at this next story.
Yeah.
Let's here we go. I don't even want to push the button. I just like, all right, there it is.
Yeah. So big news this week that the Taliban has basically taken over Afghanistan. And one of the, I would say unforeseen, but I think people did foresee this, is that the US Army were collecting biometric data on a whole bunch of different people, and now the Taliban has access to all of it, which is just a disaster in so many ways. I think it's a product of the collect all the data that you can, even if you're not going to use it approach. And the only way that this could have been prevented was just, I think it still would have been happening to some extent, but if they had just not collected all this data, or if they collected it, used it, and gotten rid of it, rather than stored it all and archived it like the default approaches.
But
this is real world, consequences. Sorry.
Yeah, no, this is bad. This is bad. and there's a lot of debate over should we have withdrawn, should we not have withdrawn. That everything fell apart so quickly only shows that the 20-year occupation was just already a failure. And like, what would it take? Another 20 years? But whatever, Taliban takes over. Specifically with respect to this story, not collecting data in the first place would do it. But again, if you can do it, you're going to do it. To me, the problem was that all this was left behind. So I get that in the military, sometimes it's cheaper to just leave a vehicle than to transport a vehicle. Wasteful, somebody else is going to get it, but okay, I get it. There's logistics behind that. In this case,
No,
you're
that's a
leaving
really good point.
behind presumably highly classified information and data and hardware that probably should have either been taken with you or at the very least destroyed. I don't there's I can't
Yeah,
imagine an excuse for that.
that's a really good point. And I'll be honest, I am so kind of this is such a horrible story that I haven't looked into it as much as I probably should have. I kind of know enough details to just, you know, but that that's really true. If there had been some system in place to delete the data before, because it's not like physical items that they have to move out, it could just be a delete command that gets run. Destroyed the hard disks. I don't think the Taliban did any kind of like data forensics,
Right.
to
They're
try
like,
and
oh look,
recover this
this thing
data
just
from it.
laying here on the floor
Yeah,
that I
maybe the
found.
problem is maybe they did get rid of classified data, but this wasn't considered classified data or something like that.
I'm sure it
I mean, come on,
was.
my
I,
laptop has file encryption on it. It's just like, if they were so easy, they could get hold of it so easily. Like, what yeah, I should read more about this to find out exactly what protections should have been there.
I have a hard time believing that the military proper just left sensitive equipment and information behind and just walked out of the building and closed the door behind them, or didn't even bother closing the door. And it almost sounds like in a case like this. And I have no, there's nothing in the story about this specifically, but my guess is it probably was a contractor who's not held to the same standards as the military proper.
Yeah,
but I don't know. That's purely speculation on my part. I don't know what contractors may or may not have been involved. I don't know exactly who this equipment came from. I'm sure it can be discovered. But the military definitely has procedures in place for dealing with situations like this. And I have a hard time imagining that they would just throw that all out the window, even if it's a relatively rushed withdrawal, and just forget about all that stuff. I have a really hard time believing that could have happened.
yeah. I know what to say, really.
They do.
Yeah.
They do talk about in the article how this was not the first time something like this happened. They share an example from 2016 where insurgents were behind a mass kidnapping of in the Afghan city of Kunduz, using a government biometric system to check to see if bus passengers were security force members. They ended up killing 12 people in that incident. Again, the details of that are in the article. Just bad, terrible all around. The one, I mean, I guess I'll call it ironic more than funny, is that the acronym for this equipment, the program, is HIDE. That stands for Handheld Intra-Agency Identity Detection Equipment, HIDE. So I imagine they had quite a chuckle coming up with that acronym for something that would do everything but protect your location. Is it like good luck
Yeah.
hiding, or you can't hide, or that?
It's
I'm
the
sure they were
imperative.
amused with
Hi.
themselves for doing
Yeah.
that. Oh yeah, hi. It's a warning. Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. I could.
Yeah. I'm going to dig into this a bit because I want to find out more, but I don't know if we should keep talking about it because it is so bad, and I'd like to try and stay a bit positive. Then again, we shouldn't shy away from topics like this because they are important. And I think this is, if there's anything that's going to convince you to that the companies and organizations should stop their default approach of sucking up all the data they can, something like this, or is, I don't know, man.
I think the problem is there's always going to be, so like we talked about Apple and their CSAM scanning last week. There was some, maybe that was the story where there was follow up. It's just going to continue to be a story.
Yeah.
Like there's a noble cause for that. Nobody wants children to be sexually abused. So if we have the technology to stop it, then we're probably going to do that. Yes, it's got all these other negative consequences, side effects. And here, I'm sure the same thing is true. I'm certain completely valid, legitimate use for this program. It may, let's just assume that it worked well. Who knows? But now it got in the wrong hands. You you can't, like, the horse has left the barn. You can't put that technology back in the bottle once it exists. More technology is always going to be created. You can't stop that. And I don't think it's effective to try and say, well, the government will regulate it, or corporations should just not do it out of the goodness of their hearts. Like, it's out there. Somebody's going to do it. I don't see a way around that. It's not that I don't care or that I want them to abuse it, but
Yeah.
like, what solves that? And I don't want to sound like it's futile, certainly, but I mean, same with social media. We're in a situation now.
There was an interesting question posted on a site that I read called tildes.net, which is pretty cool. It's like a really laid back version of like Reddit or Hacker News or something. And the question was, how do I scrub myself from the internet? Like in one of those movies. And the answer was like, you can't. There's no way. The horse has left the stable. And he followed up with, well, I know now not to use my real name. So, and it's like, don't do that. But it maybe got me wondering about, like, how would you do that? And how would you, so the reason I'm thinking about it now is because you said, okay, the technology's out there. There's nothing we can do to stop it. That's true. So how do we solve this problem? How do we counter it? How do we make ourselves invisible or scrub the information out there? They do it on TV shows, so there must be a way, right? Like, I've seen it on Leverage, I think, sure. Leverage, or the hacker movies and things. But I think the solution I came up with in my head was, you have to adopt a new identity, like you have to start from scratch.
That's what I would have
and
said.
Then just cut off that trail. That's what you would have said, yeah?
Sure, but, and I don't know where you're going with this, but I believe DNA and fingerprints are already on record with the military, so I can't get away from that. Like, if I leave a fingerprint or blood someplace, they I assume can find me, even if I change my name and use a different social security number and pretend to be somebody else.
I'm not really going anywhere with it. I was just kind of, I'm curious, what if you're, are things really just that bad? Are we really just, there's no hope for anything? There must be hope, right? There must be something we can do, some way of.
You said that with such a pleading voice, as if I would be the one to give you hope.
I was kind of hoping that you might have something that kept you going.
I've got good news for you, Peter. I do not have good news for you. No. No, it's over. We're done. The inevitable march towards our dystopian future.
That's going to be on your, that's your book, right? That's your memoir. The title of your memoirs.
I mean, I would think, because, well, on the Lost episode, we talked about, if you wanted to, let's say, plan a birthday party completely off the radar where nobody could find you, like, how would you do that? Like, how do you go online? How do you communicate with people? We've got phones with cameras and microphones on 24/7 that we typically keep in our pockets. Like, how would you get around that stuff? I don't even know. I mean, now facial recognition is source, so we're going to be wearing glasses with LED projectors on the frames to blur out our faces. This is where, like, you talked about doing strict privacy focus, and I think that's where I run into trouble, because anytime I start looking at these, like, how do you stay off the grid, it goes very quickly to like hardcore conspiracy theories about how you're tracked, the ways to get off the grid, all that kind of stuff, and I'm just not willing to go that far.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. I prefer the attempts at positive news anyway. I think it's a better.
We need to sell merch that's like little Faraday cages for your wallet and LEDs for your glasses, and tinfoil hats.
USB.
Oh, now I just
Yeah.
pissed off the audience. All right, here we go. Speaking of which, everybody should like and subscribe to the show so that we keep doing it.
Yeah, please do, and get in touch. Say hello, comment, tell us what you think.
Yeah, point us to some positive stories. Point us to some optimism.
Yeah,
I'm not closed-minded.
please.
I just, I know. Save Peter. Do it for Peter. Do it for Peter's mental health. But we are not going to end on that story. We have made a concerted effort to end on slightly more positive stories at the very least. And this I just thought was fun because, so the stories about Microsoft disclosing details on a year-long social engineering campaign. And this is from the article, where operators kept changing their obfuscation and encryption mechanisms every 37 days on average, including...
Wait, back up a second. How do you say that word?
Which word? Obfuscation?
How do you... That's the one. Yeah.
How did I say it?
We'll come back to that. I always said it, obfuscation, but...
Oh, yeah, I don't know. You say all kinds of words weird though.
That's true, but I'm English, so I'm allowed to.
It's no excuse.
Sorry, man. Carry on your explanation.
So, and what was funny is that at some point they relied on Morse code, and so it just kind of made me like, it tickled me that it's a modern day cyber attack, and part of what they're using as part of the sophisticated phishing scheme is Morse code. Which, I mean, who even? I guess you could put it into a decoder or something. I couldn't read it. I'd have to like copy this. Maybe if I copied and pasted the entire string into Google, they would just translate it for me. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised.
Google Translate does have a Morse code. Google Translate does have Morse code.
See, there you go. I would have just assumed that
Latin.
It did.
Yeah, and Klingon and Latin as well, just for reference in case.
Interesting.
Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if they started using Klingon or something like that. Anyway, I love this because it's. I had in my head this image of like a hacker, because they said that the obfuscation methods were changed on average once every 37 days. So it's like they've got this system in place, it's all working nicely, and what they do is they're just tinkering with it every month or so. Oh, we got caught. Okay, so what are we gonna do next? Guys, anybody? Okay, we can do ROT 13, right? Yeah, cool. Base 64, done that shit. Morse code, yeah, let's do it. Right, so then they spend a kind of happy afternoon recoding on that layer and stick some Morse code in, and then it carries on working for a little while, because who would you expect, to be using Morse code in the first place? I love it.
I know, and that's really just, I mean, that's one part of it. What they described is that the whole thing is so modular that if you look at any one specific part, it's totally innocuous.
Yeah.
Innocuous. It's not until they all come together that you can finally see the threat. And the quote I love from the article, it says, "This phishing campaign exemplifies the modern email threat: sophisticated, evasive, and relentlessly evolving." And it just feels so at odds with Morse code, but I love it.
I thought that was a bit of hyperbole, because, by the way, that word, I always say hyperbole in my head. Anyway, I thought there was a bit of hyperbole there, because...
I used to read it that way, but then say it the other way, and for probably 30 some years of my life, I believed that they were two different words.
I'm not, I can see that. Yeah, there's a bunch of words. There must be a word for that class of words. Anyway, yeah, I think that's the hyperbole. Relentlessly sophisticated or something. What was it? I mean, come on.
I know.
It is on one level, it's a very sophisticated piece of software.
Yeah.
But it's because it's been developed for the past 20 years, and it's an industry. It's some good coders who are being paid to write phishing stuff instead of write.
Yeah. Just made me think what's old is new again.
Yes, indeed. I love it. I mean, there must have been a bit of a chat about, like, so should we go for Morse code? Yeah, okay, sure.
Like, yeah, do you have to like teach people Morse code to be able to do that? I don't know, the whole thing. I have more questions, I guess, but like Google Translate, maybe that's all it is, and I'm overthinking it. That's what I would do.
It's a simple system. It was designed to be this simple, right?
It's beyond me. I don't know.
Uh,
And related to that, you shared this article about the history of computer viruses, and this kind of came up earlier in the week because you shared a John Oliver video where he talked about how some of the early attacks were done on floppy disks, and the whole thing just is so like at the time floppy disks weren't like retro, right? Now they
no.
are, but just these hackers are very clever. They're smart people. There's always a way in, but it's usually the humans, right? that are the weak points.
Yeah, yeah. I shared to a few people the last week tonight with John Oliver.
I'm not gonna help.
No, thanks. Thank you. Of course not. Um, which, if you don't watch it, is great. It does a kind of like deep dive into a particular issue every week. And last week he did ransomware, and just like what is it? Why is it affecting so many people? We talked about the colonial pipeline, some other examples, and he talked about one of the first examples of ransomware, which was this one where somebody physically posted 5.25-inch floppy disks, and the literal floppy ones, to AIDS researchers, and it encrypted their hard drives, and they had to send $199 or something, like $250, which is quaint, isn't it? I mean, $250. Oh, if only.
Was it even in Bitcoin, or did they want like a cashier's check?
No, it was to a PO box
Nice.
in Panama. That's right. One of the points that John Oliver made was like, isn't it nice that they were using physical posts this way and that? Anyway, yeah. So it was brilliant. I really, this stuff has been around forever. You're right. It's really clever people thinking about ways to kind of abuse the system. But it reminded me of reading through the article about the history of viruses. It reminded me of a thing on Reddit called the Reddit switcheroo, which, if you're not familiar with this, is it's like when you say one thing and you mean another on Reddit, and then where someone says something like, oh, that was nice of your mother. How did she do it? And then someone replies with, this is a terrible example. It basically, they deliberately misinterpret a statement, and then they answer with, "Oh, my mother was happy to do it," or something. I don't know. Like, this is terrible. Could we edit this out? Like, we do that, right?
I did this to myself a couple weeks ago. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
I should have come up with a better example. But basically, the Reddit switcheroo, and then somebody replies with, the old Reddit switcheroo, and then they link from their post to the subreddit, and it keeps going. So they link to the previous example of this, and it has been going for years and years and years. And it's basically a self-propagating virus, but it's done manually by the people who are in on the game, kind of thing. So it has the same properties as a virus. It self-propagates. It's a thing that kind of has certain behavior, and it'll never die. Okay. And also it spawns different threads as well. So then more than one person will reply. So then you have two instances of it, and then they will start other threads, and they can be referred back. So
self-replicating, evolving threads,
but done manually.
Yeah, and presumably just for fun.
Yeah, it is just for fun. But that's the thing, that
harm to it.
Some of the viruses and their vulnerabilities and stuff were just mistakes. None of them are like deliberately. Well, some of the backdoors are, yeah, but most of them are just bugs. Essentially, they're just bugs that can be exploited to misuse the system by somebody who has a bad intent. So the buffer overflows are the most classic example. It's where the memory bounds on a program aren't checked, and some kind of process can write past the bounds of the memory, and then the CPU just executes what's left. In a nutshell, very bad nutshell. So
similar to like SQL injection attacks, same idea.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just unquoted SQL strings being sent to the database. It's a bug, but it means that somebody else can take advantage of it to run any SQL query they like, or any code they like for buffer overflows. So people abusing this stuff isn't always just necessarily malicious in intent. I think it's kind of fascinating. The examples from the Kaspersky list, which are about the viruses that nobody really, they didn't do anything bad. They were just the self-propagating thing. I think viruses in themselves don't necessarily have to have any malicious intent. They just mostly do.
Well, once you figure out how to do it, then the next question is, what can I do with it, right? How can I profit?
How can I use that to my advantage of it?
Yeah,
how can I profit
obviously.
from it? Yeah.
How else would someone think about the world? But you spend a lot of time on this, looking at like phishing emails. It's so like you can do it by SMS, you can do it by phone, you can do it. I mean, in terms of identity theft, you could do it in person, you could do it by mail.
Yeah.
I don't know, you must be very busy trying to stay ahead of all this.
Thanks. Yeah. I've said it before, but if everything worked perfectly, we wouldn't have jobs. So thanks, criminals. That's for keeping us in.
That's true for probably most jobs, right?
I think most jobs aren't reacting to actual security threats, or involved in it in any way. Even as a marketing person, your job is fueled by criminals. Basically, it's people doing bad things let you advertise the services of people doing good things.
Sure, I think I'll just accept that at face value, but it feels like there's more to that message. Don't think that was a compliment.
No, totally a compliment. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
100%. Criminals.
There was a lot in there. If I were to unpack that.
Anyway, moving on. I think they pay my salary. Hey, it's better than some of the jobs I've done. Let's put it that way.
Okay, well, that was our last story. We managed to finish on a positive note. We managed to finish pretty much on schedule. Had some fun stories along the way. Yeah,
it was good fun, as always, Mike.
And we'll be back again. So this will go live at 10 a.m. on Friday. Is our schedule that we are now committed to. We're recording on Wednesday this week. Maybe we'll record on Thursday next week to get it out. Love the support. Follow us on the YouTube channel. The YouTubes. Follow us on the YouTubes. Like the video, and we'll keep doing it. And definitely send us some positive stories that we could talk about, or if we got anything wrong, send us that too. I don't know, whatever. We'll talk about that. I'm sure we got plenty.
We didn't get anything wrong. We didn't get anything wrong. What are you talking about?
Oh, right. We didn't get anything. I'm sure we didn't get anything wrong. We could fight about it. Have people submit made up stuff.
Yeah, that would work. That would be fun.
Try and trick us. Can't.
Yeah.
You can't trick us. All right. This is fun. Thanks for joining again, Peter. You want the last word? No, just that's it. Okay, I guess we're done.
Yeah.